Week to save America?
Well, I am running for Supervisor of Elections here in
Mm.
Collier County. I've been in this race for, probably 5 or 6 months now. Uh, I am running as the verification candidate.
Mm.
I'm running as the technology candidate. I have 40 years of technology experience. And
Here we
since the
go.
2020, yeah, go ahead,
No,
Jason.
I was gonna say that's a hot button issue for a lot of people right
Yeah,
there, the
it
technology
is.
side of things, yeah.
It is. And, like many Americans after the 2020 election, my antenna went up and said something's terribly wrong, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah,
And I started researching and using my technology background to examine public information, including the voter rolls and count vote records, which is public information after the election. And I'm also working with several great patriots across Florida who are doing the exact same thing.
mm,
So it's been a movement. It's something you would wish the government would take on themselves if they were really concerned about our election systems. But no, it's
right.
taking grassroots citizens to do the work.
So you are not I was looking at your website, you're not a career politician, this is your first time running for office, 2020 says, "I've gotta do something," you pick Supervisor of Elections.
Yes, because you look at all our institutions. Uh, our adversaries are. I consider them. They're in a revolution right now against
Yeah,
us,
right,
and they've uh, they've been really on the rampage in our institutions. They were on a slow walk, but ever since Donald Trump was elected, now they're on a real mission to take over our institutions, all of them,
yeah,
and always the last frontier for any tyranny, good tyranny, including those that we've learned from history, is the last frontier is the election system. We
right,
saw it in Brazil. That's the latest. These people have no morals,
right.
and their last frontier is to corrupt and to seize the election system. And in my opinion, that's what's taking place right now. And I can tell you from the federal government is not going to help you. In my opinion, they're in on the deal. And the state of Florida, while they call our election systems the gold standard down here, that just
Mm.
simply is not true. Just
The
because
gold
Republicans
standard
win elections doesn't mean that's true.
The gold standard, you mean you're using paper and only doing election day, and you're counting them at the precinct before transporting any ballots? You mean that's the gold standard that you have in Florida? I don't think
Oh,
so.
I wish that was the statutes, but unfortunately, the statutes say otherwise. Now, as
Right,
supervisor of elections, I will follow, of course, all statutes as constitutional officer. But there are many things that a supervisor of elections can do that they have latitude to do certain things, and
mhm,
that's what I'm proposing to do as supervisor of elections. And it's no longer just about smooth elections.
yeah,
You can run a smooth election, but if the vault in the bank is open and you're just trusting that no one's going to walk in and take the money,
right,
you got a problem. So it
right.
doesn't matter if you run a smooth bank, and that's where we are in our election systems.
Let's dig into that process for a second. So before election season anymore, it's voter registration. Now, there's some states that are running into the issue where the law says you have to clean your voter rolls, and they're not doing it. That's obvious. What's the case in Florida? Is Florida doing, and is each county doing a good job cleaning their voter rolls?
Well, it's actually a federal law, the HAVA Act of 2002. That is one of the uh, pieces of legislation, as it's the job of the state governments to make sure those voter rolls are clean.
Mhm.
Now, as we know, as we can see with the immigration crisis, the federal government doesn't much care about the laws that they pass in a lot of cases. This is just another one.
Depends who's breaking them.
It depends who's breaking them exactly.
Right.
Here in Florida, uh, our state constitution states that only U.S. citizens can vote.
Yeah.
Our statutes in Florida say only U.S. citizens can vote.
Mhm.
However, I can tell you that that information is not getting to the supervisors of elections office in the counties in the state of Florida. And the Secretary of State of Florida has a lot to do with that. He's the bosses of the county SOEs,
Mhm.
supervisors of elections. And he's made a couple of appearances before the Florida legislature, and he stated, "quote There's nothing I can do about it. He admits there's a problem. This is a federal issue, a federal problem. Go talk to Rubio and go talk to Rick Scott. That's what he said.
Wow.
I can tell you that that information is available. The state of Florida, for some reason, as red of a state we are, does not want the supervisor of elections to get that information to clean our voter rolls. And that is my number one priority. I know how to get those rolls. I know where they are, and I will get them, and I will clean out any illegal voters that are on our rolls.
Yeah.
Um, it,
How do you,
it,
go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say,
No,
how do you define clean? What's the criteria? Is it, do you
well,
look at change of
you have,
address and
obviously it's the ones we've talked about in the past. You have dead people who are on the rolls. I think we have. I just looked at a person who's been dead for 6 years, who's on the inactive list, still on the voter rolls. That's an issue. Another issue is when people move out of the county into another county in the state or to a different state.
right?
There's ways to get that information, but I think our biggest issue right now, and the way I believe that our adversaries are planning to swipe the next election, is
Mhm.
through this mass illegal immigration problem.
Yes.
The Biden administration is out there advertising how to get how to register to vote, and I can tell you it is so easy through social services,
Right.
as long as you have your court date, to get to receive uh, uh, the instructions on how to vote. The federal government right now is entrapping illegal aliens.
Yeah.
They may not know it's illegal to vote, but the federal government's not telling them, and this is all being done by this regime, and it is in violation of the United States Constitution, and here in Florida, the Florida Constitution. The reason they have the loophole is that in the I think in the HAVA Act, it's required that social services present, as long as they receive federal funds, that they present a registration or the ability to register to vote. So you have that conflict in law that this regime is taking advantage of to enlist what
Yeah.
they believe are their supporters to vote. So that's the kind of the long-winded answer to your question.
Do you follow True the Vote? Are you familiar with them out
I
of
do. I've met
Houston?
Catherine Engelbrecht.
Yeah.
Yes, I have met.
She's a friend. She's wonderful. And she's been out there, and actually was just on Tucker talking about, she found buried in some federal statute, something to the effect of, and correct me if I'm wrong, tell me exactly how this goes. Like, if someone who's here illegally tries to vote and on election day they felt or they believed that they were a citizen, then you can't question it. I mean, are you serious?
I, I saw the interview with Tucker.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that until she brought that up. But it's yet another one of the conflicting laws or statutes on the books.
Yeah.
Just like the one I mentioned, where social services has to, by federal law, offer the ability to register.
Right.
But it says nothing about who. There's no cutout for just U.S. citizens, even though our Constitution says so.
Right.
So there are all of these backdoor loopholes that our adversaries are using to get these illegal citizens on the rolls. And I believe a lot of this illegal immigration has a lot to do with trying to cement power. They are by far not popular. Most people, despite what the media tells you, most people don't support that side. They have to try to repopulate their voter base, and that's
Absolutely, because in the arena of ideas, when you actually debate and use common sense and try to convince people that your way is better than others, the left and all of their policy decisions are disastrous. They cannot win in the arena of ideas. They can't convince any more Americans to believe their communist beliefs, if you will. They've got to bring in a whole slew. It's it's almost like that replacement theory, but it's and actually the crazy part, when they're coming into Texas and Abbott and these others are shipping them off, busing them to blue states to show them. The other issue is they shouldn't be sending them to blue states, because they're going to use that in the census to count people for representation. So as all the people are leaving Illinois, leaving California, leaving New York. They're going to lose representation in Washington, D.C., but they're going to be
Yes,
replaced by illegals if we don't fix the census.
that is correct. This is my number one issue in this race, and this really isn't a technology issue. It's partly because if I can get the data, I can easily cross-reference the
Right.
voter rolls and identify these people. But this is the issue that most of my constituents identify with. You don't have to be a technology expert. It's real easy for the normal, clear thinking, even a traditional liberal. I'm not, because you don't see many of those in the
I know.
Democratic Party.
Classic liberal,
They
right?
understand that this is a problem, right?
Yes.
Uh, so this is my number one issue, and I can tell you, we just saw, I think, Jim Hoft
Yes.
just he there on his site there was an article about some DHS figures that 80% of those flights that are taken off from Texas in the dark of night, so that no one knows what's going on, they're
Right.
coming right here into the state of Florida.
Hmm.
So we know what they're up to, and despite the fact that we are almost a million plus R in Florida now. We used to be 250 plus D
Right.
about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Our adversaries are not going to stop. They are not giving up on Florida, and they're going to use this avenue to try and get back in the game in Florida because it's the only way they have.
Right.
They've lost the average citizen in Florida, and
Yeah.
and as you can see, Jason, we have a record number of Black males, Hispanics that are coming on board the Trump train. They're
Mhm.
realizing what's happening politically. And like I said, and you said, they have got to regulate their voter base. They're losing it. They are really losing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And that's why that's why I'm such a stickler. We are a
So
constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. And the fact that these guys constantly, I hate it when people refer to
that's
our
right.
country as a democracy because it's not. I don't get my rights from the mob. My rights come from God. They're supposed to be protected by the Constitution. And they keep saying democracy, democracy, our
Yes.
democracy, our democracy. Why? Because they want to confuse the illegals who are coming in to think, oh, Democrat Party, democracy. That's what I believe in. I just came from a socialist country. Now I'm so that's why they're gonna automatically try to get their constituents to vote. Let's talk technology for a moment. As an IT entrepreneur, um, through your career, you're telling me that Florida law requires every supervisor of elections to use technology. So you, as a supervisor of elections in your county, you cannot go back to paper ballots. Is that correct? You can't make that decision. It's a state thing.
Yeah, Jason. We do have paper ballots in Florida, and they are stored away. But of course, you have to, by Florida law, we have to use tabulators to tabulate the vote.
Yes,
So the
that's the
supervisor of
issue.
election has no choice. So they're put through a scanner. They're digitized. It creates an electronic record, and we have to use that tabulation. Now, I will tell you, as an information technologist, and I understand you have quite a bit of technology background as well. Uh, we do risk assessments in our business, and I have been looking at the tabulators. I've been looking at the voter rolls. I've been looking at the election infrastructure, and I will tell you right now, there's far too much risk in the technology to support our election infrastructure. So, because of that risk, I've made a commitment to, while within the statute, not violating any statutes, my commitment is to hand count the ballots, not to certify an election. Our elections must be certified by tabulator, but I will hand count ballots,
Hmm.
at least at a minimum, a statistically significant number of ballots. The current Florida law is way, way substandard as far as the post-election audit. So
Right.
I'm committed to hand counting ballots, and if everything turns out fine, that's great. Our voters in Collier County can be assured that their election is being counted correctly. I come across so many people who do not trust the tabulators. They think we run a smooth election, but are the results
Yeah.
clear?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm glad to hear that you would do everything you can, obviously within the laws, but I think you would probably, or I would encourage you to champion the effort statewide to go to your state legislature to say, look, guys, we've got to move that needle back to something that is trustworthy. Because right now, my biggest concern is our election battle that we see even in the courts, it's become my experts versus your experts. And, we learned that in COVID. Just because they have a white lab coat on and a stethoscope around their neck, a certificate on the wall, doesn't mean you can believe them.
That's right.
And so what is it? My expert versus so at a court of law when they're testifying, is it, oh, he's got a nicer suit than that guy? I mean, how does an average Joe participate in verifying this process when who do you believe? Because I can't read ones and zeros and know what's going on.
That is exactly correct. And you probably already know that these tabulators are proprietary information. They're to the vendor.
Obnoxious to me. Can't believe that.
You can't review the source code.
Right.
You would never see this kind of thing happen in the financial sector, right? You would never see the banking industry run this way without federal regulation, state regulation, and private auditing, right? Which you have in the financial sector. Plus, the customer is an auditor because they are auditing their bank statements and their credit cards, and that's why that system works. On the election side, we don't have any of that. And it's a real concern.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So I'm running on validation, and we also have an issue in voter rolls. The same thing is going on in voter rolls.
Yeah.
Where we have seen our voter rolls are vulnerable, and there's been an attack from the outside where we've seen scripts run that change streets to another street to purposely create undeliverable mail in a county in Florida. Has it happened in Collier yet? No, but it's only a matter of time. So I want to put as many preventive measures in place so our citizens are assured our voter rolls are clean and they're secure, as well as our counts. And and if you might, you talked about legislation. I've been at the forefront of legislative advocacy in Florida. I've been to Tallahassee. I've talked to our legislators. In January, Florida had some great election integrity bills that got to committee. They were all killed. The Republican legislature was not interested in election integrity bills. So as Supervisor of Elections, I will continue to push, for example, giving the supervisor the option to hand count or use tabulators. That's just an example of one.
Right. That's outstanding, because I know that there's a lot of investigations still ongoing, and I know there's a lot of crazy information still to come out before Election Day. Somebody that I watched on a video the other day, who's been at the forefront of this, promised before Labor Day that a lot of the material that they have will be brought forth. I don't understand the Republican Party not doing everything they can and championing this issue, especially in Florida. They're what? Hey, look, we're a red state. We don't need to, let's not shake anything up. Are they being protective? I mean,
just because you're a Republican, of which I am one, but I am not I would consider myself an America First Republican.
Right.
Just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you like the game.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. And just because our governor, who I like, won by 21 points does not mean we don't have problems. It should not be, we own the state, we're the gold standard.
Yeah.
It has, and frankly, if a Democrat legitimately wins an election in Collier County, all power to him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't agree with him, but that wouldn't be my job. That's what I want. I want fair elections, whatever the result is.
Yes.
And that's my goal. And if I could just say one thing about the citizenship thing. On the judicial side in Florida, our judges are very, very strict when it comes to jury selection. They will not allow a non-citizen to be on juries. How do they know who's a citizen and is not a citizen, Jason? You know how I know? Because they get the information from the Department of Motor Vehicles, who has that information. And non-citizens are kept off the rolls. Now, my question to you, if this is a rhetorical question to you, why on the executive side don't we see the same urgency?
Right.
The same information is available from the Department of Motor Vehicles. By statute in Florida, the Supervisor of Elections has the right to ask the Department of Motor Vehicles for that information. but our Secretary of State is saying he can't get it. But I know the clerk of the courts in the counties in Florida are getting it. I think there's a little bit of a problem. We need to know what's going on there and why the state of Florida does not want to provide that information to its supervisor.
Right. Was I started to receive mail to 3 to 4 names that I don't know who they are over the last several months. Like one from the VA, bank offers, stuff like that. And so when I early voted, I went to the Supervisor of Elections office and I had them, and I encourage everyone to do this, ask them, who is registered to vote at my house? A lot of times, a lot of people say, hey, you should check to make sure your family's registered. But I want to know who else is registered at my address.
Yeah.
And so I had them look it up. Now, one of the names was a person who owned the house last time. We bought the house over a year ago, but he's still registered at the house. The other 3 names, I have no idea who they are. So I had them remove them.
That's unbelievable. It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Huge problem.
In Collier County, we see homes look at is how many homes have more than 6 or 7 residents.
Yes.
And we see that. Why? Why do they have 6 or 7 residents that are registered to vote? There's
empty
a
lots.
lot of things we look at empty lots. And I can tell you some of these addresses that these folks register with are not residential addresses or commercial addresses. They're done for the purpose of harvesting ballots into a specific commercial box.
Right.
And that's not even talking about what's happening at the United States Postal Service. So yeah, this whole vote by mail thing is another animal entirely, and that's also a real problem.
Yes. Yeah. Dave, I appreciate you coming on and telling your story a little bit. I want to have you on throughout this campaign because I want to hear more, because I know you're doing a lot of research and you're meeting a lot of people who are really focused on this issue. And I appreciate you doing that. So thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, Jason. I really look forward to coming on and keeping you updated on the campaign. We've got a lot of momentum right now. And
yeah. How do people get in touch with your campaign?
You can go to my website at schaffelforsupervisor.com.
Awesome. I'll put that in the show notes. God bless you, sir.
Thank you, Jason. Look forward to talking to you down the road here.
You bet. This segment brought to you by the Remembrance Project, theremembranceproject.org.